Welcome back to The Explainer. If you're a focused learner looking to completely challenge everything you thought you knew about the physical universe, well, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're objectively exploring a really fascinating, highly alternative framework proposed by author Miles Mathis. It's a theory that attempts to literally rewrite physics from the ground up, merging gravity and electromagnetism into one single unified field. And honestly, whether you end up agreeing with it or not, examining massive paradigm shifts like this is just an incredible mental exercise. So let's jump right in and explore what this theory is all about. Okay, let's dive into this. Pretty much everyone who's ever taken a physics class knows Isaac Newton's law of universal gravitation, right? F equals g times mass 1 times mass 2 divided by the radius squared. For centuries, this has been the absolute bedrock of how we calculate the pull of gravity. But the source material for today's explainer proposes a pretty radical question. What if this isn't just an equation for gravity? What if it's actually a compound equation, and there is a hidden secret force lurking right there in plain sight? So according to this framework, that secret force is hiding inside g, the gravitational constant. The author posits that g isn't just some arbitrary scaling factor that, just makes the math work. Instead, it acts as a transform, a mathematical conversion, basically, that obscures a secondary, purely physical field. And that field is what the author calls the charge field. The big claim here is that Newton's famous formula has actually always been a compound equation. It's calculating two completely different opposing forces at the exact same time, and we just never realized it. To really grasp this, we kind of have to contrast the standard model with this proposed unified field theory. We typically understand gravity as an attractive force, right? Something that pulls inward through empty space. Yes, but the source fundamentally flips this foundational understanding of reality on its head. In this alternative model, gravity doesn't pull inward at all. It expands outward. And space? Well, it isn't empty. It's densely filled with a physical, repelling photon gas. This brings us to our first major conceptual flip: gravity redefined as expansion. So literally forget everything you know about gravitational attraction. In this framework, taking a cue from Einstein's equivalence principle, gravity is redefined as a real physical acceleration outward in all directions. Imagine a constantly inflating balloon. The author argues that matter itself is physically expanding. You are expanding, the Earth is expanding, and the distance between us is expanding at a proportional rate. Because the rates match perfectly, we don't actually perceive the growth, but we do feel the physical push of the Earth expanding up into our feet. That, the theory claims, is the true nature of gravity. It's a push from below, not a pull from the center. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why this theory was developed in the first place. The author points to historical anomalies, specifically the 1850s J.H. Prot Himalayan anomaly. Back then, surveyors totally expected a hanging plumb line to deflect sideways, pulled by the massive weight of the Himalayas. But it barely budged. It left scientists completely scratching their heads. Standard physics went on to create complex theories about low-density mountain roots just to explain it away. But according to our source material, the explanation is beautifully simple. Gravity is strictly an upward-outward expansion. The mountains are expanding upward, not pulling sideways. Therefore, a sideways deflection shouldn't even occur. Moving right along to the second half of this unified model, the charge field bombardment. So if gravity is just matter expanding, what exactly is charge? Well, the author defines the charge field as a physical field made entirely of bombarding photons, or B photons, radiating outward from the surface of all matter. Remember when we said space isn't empty? In this model, space is packed with a photon gas. Every single piece of matter is constantly radiating real, physical photons that literally hit everything in their path. So while gravity is an outward expansion of matter, the charge field creates a repulsive force through the direct physical contact and kinetic bombardment of these microscopic B photons. Now you're probably wondering, wait, if matter is constantly radiating photons, why doesn't it eventually run out of mass? It's a great question, and the answer is charge recycling. Particles, like protons and electrons, actually act as tiny cosmic batteries or engines. They pull in this ambient photon gas at their north and south poles, spin it through their internal geometry, and then continuously shoot it out at their equators. It's basically a perpetual recycling system. It maintains the repulsive charge field without the parent object ever losing a single drop of its foundational mass. And this brings us right to the absolute climax of the theory, a vector tug of war. Let's walk through how this vector opposition actually works. Step 1, we have the outward physical expansion of the body, which creates the physical push we think of as gravity. Step 2, we have the outward bombardment of the charge field, those B photons, pushing back against us, acting as a repulsive force. And then, step 3, the resultant force. According to this framework, what you see when you step on a bathroom scale, what we typically call weight or gravity, is actually just the mathematical subtraction of these two forces. It's the gravity vector pushing up minus the charge bombardment pushing back. The author uses a really vivid analogy to cement this idea, and it's super helpful. Think of a particle like a rocket sitting on a launch pad. The rocket has its engines on all the time, constantly firing downward. Now, if you tried to weigh that rocket while the engines were firing, the scale wouldn't give you the true full weight of the metal, right? Because the downward exhaust is offsetting it. In the exact same way, the theory proposes that the true mass of every single object in the universe is obscured by its own outward radiation exhaust. We only ever measure the remainder. Okay, so how does a unified field theory like this apply to the real world? Let's check out solving cosmic mysteries. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this single staggering number, 95%. In standard astrophysics, scientists observe the rotation of galaxies and the movement of the cosmos, and they realize there is nowhere near enough visible mass to make the math work. In fact, standard physics claims that about 95% of the universe is just missing. They say it's made up of completely invisible, undetectable, dark matter and dark energy. But here is the author's highly controversial, yet mathematically simple solution. The missing 95% of the universe isn't mysterious dark matter at all. It's simply the mass of the charge field itself. Because standard physics doesn't recognize that photons have physical mass, and because it measures a compound resultant force on scales, it drastically undercounts the true gravitational mass of galaxies. By adding the mass of the photon gas that fills the universe and accounting for that vector subtraction we just talked about, the author claims the mass deficit is solved perfectly. Absolutely no magical dark matter required. The theory also aims to completely redefine celestial mechanics, specifically the Roche limit. That's the zone where a planet's tidal gravity is supposedly strong enough to rip a moon apart. Standard gravity math really struggles to explain how low-orbit moons like Jupiter's Metis or Saturn's Pan exist at all without being totally shredded. Actually, scratch that. Pan isn't just surviving, it's actively accreting and gathering material inside the supposed breakup zone. The author claims tidal gravity math is fundamentally broken. Instead, he proposes these moons survive because the charge field repels them, preventing collisions. Furthermore, the framework asserts that our own moon's heavily obliterated nearside crust isn't some random mystery. It's actual physical proof of Earth's relentless charge bombardment blasting away at it over millions of years. And that brings us to a massive question to ponder. We've neutrally laid out the mechanics of this proposed unified field. Gravity is expansion, charge is bombardment, and our measured reality as the vector subtraction of the two. If this alternative framework really is the skeleton key to the universe, explaining everything from missing dark matter to surviving moons to the actual nature of weight, how does it change your entire view of the night sky? Does looking up at empty space feel different if you imagine it packed with a glowing, repelling gas of recycled photons? It's a profound paradigm shift to consider. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it sparked your curiosity. And as always, keep learning.